Mckay, welcome to the
Thank
lockdown
you.
session. How are you?
I'm doing well today.
I like
I'm
the
not
con-
going to give you my standard, oh, things are good.
but you're doing well.
I'm doing well today. Yeah. I'm excited to have this conversation with you, Brad. This has been something that has sort of pulled me forward, is the opportunity to really to kind of chew on some big ideas and some things that have been kind of bubbling up for me over the last few months. So I'm
Set it
excited.
up. You set it up beautifully. I mean, if I just say it as it is, one of the reasons why I got in touch and connected with you was because of your name, right? Just it just stood out, aura, and with my sort of holistic background, I was just drawn to it. And when we had that conversation before Christmas, which I think lasted for about 2 hours before,
I think so too. We'll just have a quick chat 2 hours later.
um, one of the things I found really interesting when you describe sort of what you're involved in and what you're engaged with. So, founder of the online platform, the business of creativity, and we're connected through a kind of creative process that drew your name into sort of my network. You also work as a business coach with creatives, particularly with creatives who are running their own business, entrepreneurs. And so I thought it'd be quite interesting because I'm hearing a lot about creativity, process, unlocking that personal creativity. So I thought, okay, it's the beginning of the year. This is a great time to get someone like you in to say, come on then, let's shine a light on this stuff. So as someone who lives in that creative world, what have you been observing during these ridiculously challenging times of, we're in our third national lockdown here in the UK. You said in Canada, some parts are better behaved than others. So
They are indeed. West Coast has a little bit more like freedom and doesn't have the same kind of rules and curfews. We're like the well-behaved younger brother or something. East
right,
Coast is definitely on lockdown. And I love how you asked that question, Brad, because it the observation of the people that I am connected to through my business, so my clients, the people that I'm connected to as colleagues in the business coaching, in the leadership world, the people that are running their own businesses, the observations are similar and yet completely diverse at the same time. So there's a similarity in that the experience of themselves as creatives has sort of shifted a little bit. The expectation of this is who I am as a creative, the expectation of this is how my process looks with creativity has shifted. And for some, it has shut them down and dampened and really sort of negatively impacted their ability to even do their craft, let alone run their business. And for some others, because the process and the environment and the sort of thinking and expectation around so many things has shifted, it's like opened up possibility for them where there wasn't any at all. And so there's a really interesting kind of dichotomy in how creative people seem to be reacting to dampening in the economy and even just the sort of overall change in the zeitgeist of what we're experiencing as cultures around the world. So it's been interesting to see those sort of two different and sort of unfolding and then a collapsing of creative self-expression. What I'm seeing though, and which is totally lighting me up, is the innovation that is coming out of so many different businesses and industries. Just even look at a commercial on your television, an advertisement in a magazine. Notice how the language of it has changed, how the visuals have changed, how people are creating different business models, different products, and different ways of serving. And I think that innovation in the economy is really exciting. So there's the impact on the individuals, but then there's also what's happening in terms of a possibility and an opportunity in the market that I'm excited about.
I know what you say, especially about creatives. So I grew up in a family of musicians, and most of them still are classically trained professional musicians. So the last 9 months have been horrific for them.
Mm.
No live concerts, the odd Zoom concert at home, but never have they been so appreciative of teaching. Um, and I remember just watching on New Year's Eve, we have this show, the ex-keyboard player of Squeeze, the old 80s pop group, Jules Holland, he runs this hootenanny on a New Year's Eve, right? And he just
People
gets,
still say hootenanny? Is that still a word, Brad? I don't know about hootenanny.
so he runs the show. And, this year they had Tom Jones and Celeste and some great singers that were coming to play. They were so happy
Mm.
just to be performing live. There wasn't anyone in the audience because of lockdown restrictions. The only people in the audience were the camera crew and the other musicians who were coming to play. And you could tell that these people were alive again.
Mm.
In the corporate world, you were either like the drowned or the saved. So if you were furloughed, you were kind of drowning, right? Because you just didn't really know what was happening, security issues, challenges. If you were going to work and you weren't followed, you just had so much to do because you were probably covering for different roles that were being. I mean, it was tough, and then it was tough again in the summer, and then it's tough again in the winter. Creatives, so I'm speaking generically here, are often emotive in nature. It's sometimes what drives that creativity, that ability to connect with that emotion. Has
I,
lockdown
I,
been
I
harder?
think when you're talking about creativity for self-expression, yes, but
Yeah.
the people that I most work with and serve are people who are doing creative services. So they're in service to others. So
Mhm.
they're not necessarily in service to their own self-expression. So I'm talking about photographers, videographers, copywriters, designers who are in fact in service of helping others create an expression of their brand, of their marketing message, of their, family bonds. So I think that creativity from self-expression and creativity in service of others has a very different approach to what's driving them to do the act of actually creating something. And what I've noticed is many of the creatives that I work with, their drive to start a business in the first place came from there's not really any opportunities for employment to do the kind of work that they wanted to do. So there was almost like there is no option A, there's only plan B. More things are changing, of course, but so a lot of them were driven into opening their business because they have this skill, they have this desire to be in service of others, and they don't have another distribution channel to be able to connect that way. So I better start a side hustle or become a freelancer and then gradually grow into an entrepreneur or small business owner. And it feels like the people who are really approaching their business as a business seem to be having a different experience right now than the ones who are coming from self-expression.
Go on.
Go on, he says. All right. So my feeling is that the people who are coming from business are really being impacted by the shift in the economy. And the people who are coming from self-expression are being really impacted by the shift in sort of the emotive aspect of the cultural zeitgeist that we're in the middle of. I mean, all of us as human beings are being impacted in this sort of mental, emotional way. And for some, that could be a barrier to doing the thing that you do, to actually being in your business. For others, it's going to be fuel. It's
Yeah.
going to add to that fire.
Have you seen kind of the whole maelstrom of emotion from the people? I love the way you say that you serve. I think that's such a great descriptor for someone who coaches in business, right? You're there to serve them. Um, have people got that clarity? Have you observed clarity? And I asked the question, it's a little bit loaded because I think I've observed a lack of clarity in a lot of my clients in recent months, where they're just not sure that, you know, corporates are, they're planning 3 months ahead. There's no 6-month, half-yearly business plan. It's
Well,
plan for next quarter, and that's a multi-million national, you know, international.
well, see, this is it. So first of all, there's a distinction between clarity and uncertainty that I would like to make.
Go on, love that.
And then you're not wrong in that a 3-month business plan. But here's the deal. Creatives are used to living in a flexible, dynamic, gig-based economy. They're never planning a year out because we can't predict that far. So we're used to a 3-month, 6-month, 90-day sprints. That's the world creatives live in, is 90-day creative sprints, 90-day business sprints. So for many of us, it's actually validating our business planning strategy that we've been using sort of intuitively for the last sort of 4 to 5 years, and going, well, as a creative, I'm not going to make a 5-year plan. I'm not going to steer an enterprise ship the same way I'm going to row my dinghy. Like, it's just, you just don't. So there's that piece. And then let's look at the distinction between clarity and uncertainty. Because I can have clear intentions, clear goals, and no idea if it's actually going to happen or not.
True.
So many of my clients get clarity in an uncertain world, in an uncertain economy. And like, one of the things that I've noticed and observed, if you want to talk about observations, is that many of us have relied heavily on the past predicting the future. We're told to go find a business that has been successful in the industry and model exactly what they did before. Or, if we can take last year's earnings and we can look at our activities, and then we can project next year's earnings based on that. Well, the whole world has just gotten a little wake-up call in that there isn't predictability now. We can't trust the past to navigate our future into it. And in fact, what I think it's done is it's really highlighted that we never could predict the future, that all these year-long plans and 5-year plans, they're just our best guess.
At best, yeah.
They always have been our best guess. There's never any certainty into cash flow pro formas and budgets and there is no certainty. We can set clear intentions. We can have clarity in our strategies. We can have clear, well thought out, well developed plans. We won't have any certainty about our future ever. So I think that if we get attached to that as a requirement, that can stop us in our tracks. And then we take no action. And with inaction, we have no results.
I'm with you. I remember watching an interview with Sir John Whitmore, who used to race Le Mans and ended up becoming the guy who created the GROW model for coaching. And actually, I found out recently that Sir John Whitmore was very good friends with Steve McQueen. Right, who'd have known, right? Right, so Steve McQueen was obsessive about his racing and used John Whitmore to try and get a film off the ground around sort of Formula One. It was going to be the best film of the time, 1966 we're talking about. And John Whitmore was giving this interview, and he was mentioning a bit about Steve McQueen, but he was also talking about the best laid plans. He has the biggest problem with strategic planning is it totally ties you blinded to this plan. And what happens is you end up going off plan, having to readjust, reset, rethink. What about if we didn't have such a connection to our plans and they were just more loose and more fluid and we moved with where we felt we should go? he recognized that, the big corporates with shareholders, they want security. But to your point, nothing in our past can tell us what's going to happen. Because if I'd have said to you, Aura, this time last year, what do you think you're going to be doing in January 2021?
It would not have been this, I will tell you.
Right.
It would not.
Well, I would not have said to you, I wouldn't have traveled for 9.5 months.
Right?
I've not left the 10-kilometer radius of my home in 10 months. I just want new scenery. The other day, as soon as we're allowed to move around, I want to go on a road trip because I just want new scenery. I've been looking at the same things.
Well, and so think about that as a business metaphor. And when we're so used to the scenery, we get blinded to the journey that we're on. And I think that what's happening is that we have had a wake-up call in business to we can't just do the same old. This attachment to things like, oh, vision and purpose. If we've been playing lip service to it, right now, this is where the rubber meets the road and we go, oh, whoops, we were actually not connected to what really matters to us. Because I think that the solution to not being as attached or entrenched into our plans or goals or SMART goals, or you have to achieve them, or your KPIs, or your whatever it is, how I've been approaching it in my training and with a lot of the creative entrepreneurs that I've been working with is looking at focus and meaning separate from clear metrics and outcomes. So that I might be focusing on, penetration into a new market, or, nurturing a new market because, all of us, our markets are shifting and we're trying to find out, okay, well, where do we fit now? So maybe, my focus is market penetration. Well, why? Why is my focus market penetration? Why is that important to me? Why does that matter? What is the difference that is going to make to me or others in the world? What is the purpose behind that? Because what I think happens and has been happening is that when we set our intention, we often get manifest the intention or the sort of the reason behind it, even if it doesn't come in the package that we think it should be. So the what of our goals doesn't always get manifest, but the why behind it often or almost always is. So I think that if metrics are important. Absolutely. I am not dissing metrics, and especially, number-based metrics are really important to measure in a business. And what if we focused more on meaning than metrics when we were looking at the health and viability of our business?
I think the companies that are doing that are the ones showing the care for their employees. Genuinely giving people a chance to move away from what gets measured gets done. End of story. Yeah. Well, not everything valuable gets measured. So already there's a problem with that. Now we're all at home. So if I call you 10 times a day to see how you are, impact, you think I'm checking up on you. It's all about the number, right? How do we move to a position where we're able to talk about what we feel without worrying that that's going to somehow expose us as vulnerable? There's almost this feeling, isn't there, that there's a humanity about the way people are operating at the moment that maybe lends itself to something you said offline, which is, almost that this year offers every single one of us a chance to try whatever we want and see if it sticks. Because even if it doesn't stick and we feel like, oh, we failed at that, it's like, well, what's the next thing we're going to try? Now is the time to try.
Exactly, because there's almost an expectation of failure out there, that businesses aren't expected to succeed or thrive during this pandemic time, during these shifts in so the expectation isn't maybe the same as it has been in the past. And there isn't that same sort of conflation of, if my business fails, I am a failure. There's a little bit more, I think, separation available to us right now in the economy, because there is that sort of baseline expectation that, well, it's going to fail. And so for me, you're right, that really has opened up the possibilities. And I think the question of, so how do we shift away from, what measure matters, or are we measuring the right things? And how do we open up the conversations for being able to talk about our feelings and our thoughts and our beliefs, and how those now impact the business decisions, the actions we take? How do we actually do that? I think that's probably one of the most important conversations to have right now within your organization, and even within yourself. Like, because I focus mostly on solopreneurs, they're in a position of, most of their conversations are happening internally. And so they're either going to get validation, or they're going to get completely sabotaged. And they don't have any outward perspective of, is this thinking going to serve my business and serve me going forward? And so I think solopreneurs are almost at a disadvantage in that case, because they're not able to try on different possibilities. And I think that's more what I'm speaking to, is not necessarily, oh, I get to fail, but, oh, I see this shift in the status quo expectation. It's going to be the same as it was last year. This is how business is done. Well, that's just been blown up and exploded. And so the opportunity to just try on a different business model, to just try on shifting how my services are packaged, to see if that actually serves people at the level that I'm committed to serving them. I wouldn't have tried it this way 2 years ago, because my market research said that that's not what the market really was going to respond to. We don't have market research. We don't have enough time to have data to know for sure, with certainty, what is the market going to respond to. We don't. So I think there's this just sort of freedom to try on different plans and business models and ideas.
So how do you harness that freedom as a creative solopreneur, as you say, which I think is a wonderful word? How does one harness that creative flow to keep that focus, that zero lens focus?
Well, wait, I thought you were going to answer that question. I thought you were bringing this is how it's done, people. Brad's going to share the answers to all of your questions. No, not you.
If that was true, I would have written that book during lockdown that everyone said we all had in us.
Right?
I don't have a book in me.
And so, you ask the question as if there is a universal answer. And I think that therein lies the challenge for people who have been searching for that answer, or searching for the book to write with that answer, is that I think that, how do I focus and harness my creative energy, whether that's in the terms of ideas and innovation, so innovating your industry, innovating your business, innovating your product offering, innovating your SOPs or operations. Like, how do you harness creativity, ideas, and innovation? How do you turn that on and then focus it on where it's going to make the biggest difference and have the most meaning and impact? Well, I think the question doesn't have a singular answer. And I think that that's where we've been getting kind of caught up in. I think that the answer is unique to the business, to the leader in the business, to their value system, and their capacity for possibility and risk. Like, there's so many variables how you would answer that question. So I think one of the ways that you can answer that question for yourselves as a leader or as a solopreneur is to look at what matters to you, to start with the meaning and the why and the what matters to you. And then from that, you are connected to the core energy of what's going to drive you. We are driven by our feelings, our thoughts, and our beliefs. So my answer would be to get so crystal clear about that piece that drives you, that the what of it or the how of that, how that gets expressed, just kind of will actually flow out with possibilities for you to try on. That sounded a little bit woo-woo, but I promise it's based in experience for sure.
Nothing wrong with a bit of woo. Talk to me about sort of how you get people. I feel your passion when we talk, your energy. I'm thinking from a coachee's point of view, I can see why they engage with you. How do you help people kind of tap into that passion and talent? Now, I talk a lot about ikigai, and the Japanese concept of finding your passion and talent and aligning it with a way of actually making a living and being really happy. How do you tap into that, especially when people's motivation can be on the low ebb side? A lot of our motivations need a lot of work to keep them going during these times. So,
well, and I think to speak to even to your first question on my observation, I think that the general feeling that my clients are bringing that I am having to do a lot of work with is, yeah, but why bother?
right.
So how do you reignite the passion? How do I, as a business coach, help to fuel that hope and optimism? Well, one of the ways that I do it is that I have my go-to evidence of awesome. Like, this is my hashtag evidence of awesome. I work really hard with my people to find the evidence of awesome every single day. So some of the assignments that I practically give people is to do an evidence of awesome journal entry daily of 3 to 5 things. But it's not just writing down, I'm awesome because, although that is what you write, I am awesome because, and then why this matters to me. So it's not just, I'm awesome because I managed to shower before noon, because for some people, that is a huge little sign of an evidence of awesome. Like, that is huge success for some. But it's the piece about, and this matters to me because. So when you can tie in even small observations of your capabilities, your awesomeness, your brilliance, your creativity, when you can tie them into that same core feeling of, well, it matters to me that I showered, because this is a sign that I am prioritizing my self-care, and I'm putting body before business, and I'm creating myself as someone who is competent and capable, and I'm creating new habits, and I'm keeping my word to myself, and I have integrity. Like, there's a whole bunch of reasons why having a shower can show up as a huge success in a day. So one of them is that daily practice of the mastery and the mastery of the practice of looking for the evidence of awesome in every single day. And it builds momentum. And let me ask you this, Brad. If you have ever tried to build a 90-day business plan or a 6-month business plan when you are feeling like a failure, like there's no hope, like why bother, when all the evidence points to things aren't working, it's almost impossible to create an awesome idea or innovative solution from that state of being.
Of course, right? In fact, my intuitive response to that is I've given up very quickly when I acknowledge this is not this is not the right space to do it.
Yeah. And it's like, go have a walk, reconnect to your meaning, journal, talk to your coach, like do something to reconnect to that core element of, well, this is why I bother. Like, and if you don't have an answer to why bother, that's the first thing to get, is to get that answer to why bother. Because if you're in that state of why bother, you're never going to create anything. I say never. It's very unlikely that you will create something that is going to be sustainable, profitable, and fulfilling to you.
Right. And, you know, I can think the converse of that when I think of colleagues, ex-friends, you know, over the years who have found themselves in very senior positions, earning very, very good wages, hating
it. Yes. It's like, this is where I say, like, design your life and then build the business to support that lifestyle. Because otherwise what ends up happening is you could be brilliant at building a business that you hate.
Right. I can think of one friend who, by the time he realized he really hated his work, he was a senior partner, both his kids were in private school, he had 2 mortgages on a buy-to-let and the house they lived in. He couldn't leave to do what he really wanted, which was, you know, to run a cattery for £7.50 a night.
Right? Golden handcuffs of what's perceived as external success measurements. So you spoke to this a little bit earlier in our conversation about, you know, people are not necessarily measuring the right things. And so there's a piece of work that I do around getting clear about your measurements of success. What does count as success for you, so that you know when you've actually achieved it. But to speak to this piece, Brad, about, you know, there's also the situation that happens when we're all fired up and we're excited and we feel unstoppable. And so now we're going to set our goals. And they're like these huge, big, lofty, audacious, oh my God, brilliant goals. And they're like aspirational, and we're so committed and we're so motivated and we're going to do it. And then like 2 weeks later, we're looking at these things and they appear like shackles of obligation that are going to just strangle and stifle us. So no matter what, whenever you're doing a 90-day plan, a 5-year plan, setting New Year's resolutions or goals, we are setting those goals based on who we are in the moment that we set them. And we're looking into the crystal ball of our future and going, in 1 year, I think I'm going to care about this stuff. And I think that this stuff is going to matter to me. And I think that this is where I'm going to feel happy and fulfilled and successful in my business. I think so. It's our best guess. But the very next day, we are a completely different human being in so many regards. And then the next day. And so we are always evolving, and what we might, how we think what we care about should look can shift and change, and life changes and opportunities come. And so, you know, we're never going to be able to make a plan that, you know, we can guarantee and have certainty is going to work out the way that we want. And we can set our intentions, and we can focus our energy, and we can focus our time and our actions, and we can focus our ability to recognize opportunities that are in line with what it is that we're going after. So there's lots of tools that we have, but we will never be able to predict with absolute certainty what our future is going to look like. And in fact, we are going to be different human beings once we get and live into that future.
We can only be present. There's almost an argument for being totally present and remaining present. But I also understand that planning has a sense of security about it. Whether it's misguided or not is up for debate. I think we're both sitting on the side of, is it really necessary? I know enough people who would sit here and go, you guys are off the wall. You've got to plan. You've got to know your strategy.
Planning is absolutely necessary. I just think that we have unrealistic expectations of a plan.
Yeah, and the plan
So
is
I'm just here to adjust the expectations.
right. And actually, there's something in that, because if I adjust my expectations, I'm in control again.
Yep.
When I have expectations and then they're not met, that I'm disappointed, I'm pissed off, I'm annoyed, I'm let down. In
If
fact,
the expectation is that you're not going to have any income or clients for the next 6 months, great. Then you can plan for that. It still might not feel fun or
no,
easy, but you will be in a state of intentional action and control, and you will be causing the matter instead of being affected and impacted by.
how do you think the world's doing? You said before about, we're kind of in the same boat. I kind of view this as we're all in the same storm. We're all in different boats. And some of us are in dinghies, some of us are in 30-foot yachts.
Yeah.
We're all in the same storm. Somebody said to me this morning, I think, the universe has invited us all to tap into our humanity.
Well, I feel like that's a big question, Brad, because I think, so there's a few different things going on here, as always with our conversations. It's one of the reasons why I love chatting with you so much, is because you ask one question and it can have so many different layers to it. So part of it for me is I can't pretend to know how the world is doing. I simply don't have the bandwidth to check in on the whole world.
Oh,
And then I go,
name's Aura.
I know, right? I just have to meditate into it and the world is really. And then part of it is you see what you look for as sort of one of my sort of worldviews. And what that kind of looks like practically is that all of us are kind of seeking validation on some level or another. And often what happens is we will go out into our circle of friends and talk about whatever we're talking about and give validation. Oh, you're so right. Oh, that's so right. Oh, yes, you know, that makes sense to you. And we're finding more and more in terms of the world that I'm exposed to is that we're connecting on the internet. And we're looking for validation for our worldview out there in the world, as we always do as human beings. And then what's happening now is that we're getting a perpetuating loop of validation that happens because of how the internet is designed. I mean, we are being shown more of what we already believe, instead of a diversity of opinion or idea or any of those kinds of things. So I look for expression of positive humanity and human potential and extraordinary acts of kindness and generosity. And I see the world full of possibility and optimism and hope for the most part. So what I see in the world is what I look for. And I see incredible innovations in business and in ways that people are finding to interact with each other, to create community, to find new ways to navigate the changes in the economy. So when I look out in the world, I see hope and possibility, but not to the extent that I'm not to the extent that the humanity of it still impacts me. The deaths, the illness, the disruption, the isolation, the fear still absolutely impacts me. And I choose to look for the evidence of awesome.
In psychology, we call that cortical facilitation. where what we focus on grows. So if I decide today and I say to you, do you know what, Aura, I'm going to get a new car. I'm going to get a red BMW. I know that as of tonight, I will see red BMWs everywhere, right? So as soon as I draw my brain to it, and cortical facilitation is this idea of once I know what I'm trying to do, once I have that clarity of not the goal, but the why I'm doing it, then actually everything that my attention gets drawn to will probably be aligned to that, meaning I bring myself more of those things. And there's parts of that one I find enchanting because it gives me a feeling of control over my outcomes.
And I think that's the genius in planning as well, is
Right.
the sort of focusing of the intention. Yeah.
But of course, human beings want to be concrete. We're not good when it's not.
Oh, yes. Even with all of our tools in psychology, we still want certainty.
So I'm wondering, back to your creative solopreneurs, there is no certainty. The world is complex. It is ever changing. How do they find a balance of Zen calmness and knife between the teeth, head down, start up, let's go?
I don't know that they do. So a couple of things. Creatives, I think, are at a little bit of an advantage because we have always been in a industry of uncertainty, meaning as a service provider, even as a business coach, I am selling something that is invisible, intangible. In fact, I'm selling a promise.
Yeah.
So I'm used to dealing with things that are invisible and uncertain, and I'm used to trying to even convince you that, yeah, you can believe me, I'm going to make it happen. Yeah, trust me, it's going to be great. So I think that creatives have a little bit of an advantage because we live in a world where invisible still has, and uncertainty still has some value to it, and we have some comfort level with it. But how do we create that Zen-like balance between sort of knife in the teeth, hell-bent for leather, nose to the grindstone, go, and, oh, let's create things. Right. Well, my experience is that most creative service providers that I know do not create from a place of, they create from a place of chaos and ADHD and 17 different ideas at once and having to corral them into a world. What they are experiencing as a struggle is, and this is true for people that are new to working from home, or who are experiencing the sort of dissolution of the structure that they normally had. Creatives don't think that they want or need structure. And in fact, it is constraint that creates the container in which they can be wildly creative. So my solution is to support creatives in learning how to do time management and scheduling to give them some edges against which they can be innovative and creative in their lives.
You're giving them the boundaries to bounce within. Yeah. I remember years ago, one of my patients, she was wonderful. She was a pure creative, dancer, musician, singer. She'd had quite a prestigious dancing career as a young woman, so from 14 to 19 in ballet. Then damaged her knee and couldn't ballet anymore, so kind of went into kind of, dancing on music shows and then in bands, and ended up as a singer-songwriter, recording even to this day. But she was bipolar and diagnosed as bipolar when she was 22. Which explained a lot of what her world was like in her teens. but she had incredible manic swings. She used to say to me, she was at her most creative when she was in one of her manic streams. And actually, she would deliberately not take medication for 3 or 4 days because the speed at which her brain, I remember doing a session with her once when she was in a manic phase. I go quite fast. I could not keep up for a moment with this individual. They were writing, scribbling, talking about the color of the pen they were using, jumping up, sitting down, flying out the door, remembering they wanted a drink of water. And then by the end of this hour, there were like 150 post-it notes with all these ideas that once they were maybe calm, they could put into themes, and it was incredible to watch. And she said to me afterwards, you see, that's why I want to be like that. That's how I create from a place of complete uncertainty, because she's absolutely in an episode. She's in the middle of what normally feels normal and sane and safe to completely unsafe, wild, and out of control. And yet when she was in that space, she was always at her most creative. She produced like 3 songs for me. Just sat down.
How is she doing right now?
So actually I heard from her just before Christmas. And she's doing really well. She's living in the northeast of England. She's recording her own music. She's still on medication, but taking it regularly. And I joked with her about her creative process. And I think she's found alternative ways of doing it. Because in her 20s, it also became quite a destructive path. But it was incredible.
Well, and this is the challenge, and I think that this is what you're speaking to, Brad, is that how do we maintain access to what can be very frenetic, creative energy in a way that actually serves and supports us instead of shows up as being disempowering or destructive or something like that. And one of the things that has happened, so all creatives are familiar with imposter syndrome at some level.
Everyone is, whether they're creative.
I was going to say this is a human nature, right? So what's happened now is that there's a whole other level of shooting all over people that's happening,
Right.
where you should be super creative because you're in the pandemic and now you have time. You should be creating more things because now you're in this this heightened emotional state, and that's how creatives work, because they express when they're in heightened. And you should be doing this, and you should, and so we're shooting all over ourselves at this whole other level that's creating a lot of challenges for my clients in terms of, I'm not having that experience, so am I wrong? Like they're doubting their ability to be a creative even because their process has been interrupted, and then they've been told that there is an expectation of behavior that they're not meeting. And I think this is where we have come to in terms of, you ask me what's my observation on how the world is doing. The world is struggling to meet expectations of behavior when each and every one of us is having a unique experience. And there is no homogeneous, universal way that we are going to navigate it.
I think we were talking last time when I said to you, I was starting to get a bit irritated at the beginning of lockdown with everyone telling me how I could write a book or learn an instrument or a language. I just wanted to still be in business by the end. And when I started these lockdown sessions, it was purely to create a legacy of digital content of really interesting people talking about their experience during the lockdown. I mean, when the lockdown's over, this whole podcast needs a new title if it's going to continue, right? I mean, let's say it as it is. It's pretty short-lived. It will be a year probably, and then the lockdown sessions will be no more.
I love your optimism. I love it. I love it. Set the intention. We got this. There is no certainty. We'll just act as if.
Yeah, and the fact is that, you know, we're now on season 2, episode 70 or something, and, you know, we're going to tip 100 episodes before this whole thing is over. And all I wanted to do was talk to interesting people. And I think, so to your point, what I think happened is the first time this all kicked off, everyone got caught up in, we should be doing this. We should be making use of the time. I think now what's happening is we are recognizing that it's mentally and emotionally and physically such a challenge. Let's stop shoulding all over us and actually try and get through day to day with that kind of sense of purpose as to what today is all about. And so one of the big lessons for me is not to worry about next week or next month. Actually, what do I need today? And whether that's what am I grateful for or what am I a bit annoyed about, and finding that balance. So for me, when I talk about that balance, it is about looking at things with a balanced view. So recognizing when things are tough, yes, there are tough moments about being stuck at home for 10 months. But at least I've got a home. Every single one of my problems is a first world problem. It really is.
Well, and I think that we can see that perspective that we have first world problems when we get back to what really matters.
Mm-hmm.
When we connect to that, like, okay, but what really matters?
Yeah.
Like, does it really matter that, you know, COVID is making it hard to get my favorite brand of almond milk? No, like that is absolutely not a problem.
My daughter would argue with you because
I know, right? I'm like, the people that I know, there's gonna be comments like, it totally matters. Like, what's your favorite brand? Like, where are you getting it? Source me out. Like, we're gonna have a whole little underground black market milk run going. But you're right. Like, there are ways and tools and practical aspects that we can use. And the one that I use, and the one that I've been using this one forever, is that every single day I have a download. I either do it the night before or the morning of all the things, all the to-dos, all the wish, all of the things. And then in the morning, I pick 3. I just pick 3 things. 3 actionable things that can be done in one day, that can be completed in one day. And so sometimes if there's things that cannot be completed in one day, I will say I invest 2 hours on my marketing strategy. So I can complete 2 hours in a day. So I pick those 3 things and I text them to my accountability partner. And then the next day I say, this is what happened, and this is what I'm going to do today. And it's just a reporting. It's not this is what happened and I'm a failure and I didn't do it and it's terrible and here's all my excuses. It's just, no, I didn't write the email to my list today. Okay, great. And my accountability partner notices when writing an email to my list has been on my to-dos, on my top 3s for a couple of days in a row. And she calls me on it and she says, so are you going to do it, or are you just going to keep putting it on the list? Because what's going on? And so having that routine and the structure of just pick 3 things to work on that day, and having a listening for it so that I get somebody outside of my own solopreneur brain that's either validating or sabotaging, I get a judgment-free accountability way to focus, because this expectation of being able to have more energy and bandwidth right now is, I think, unrealistic. I think we as a culture have less. Think about it. We talk about certainty, and that's kind of been a bit of a theme today. What is the state of being physiologically when we are in uncertainty? it's high cortisol levels, it's endorphins, adrenaline, raised heart rate, it's extra acids in our stomach. It's not sustainable in terms of a physical system for long periods of time. It is, we are in a toxic physiological environment because of the emotions that we are experiencing around us. And that's impacting our energy, our focus, our ability to be creative, have ideas and innovations. It all is I think we're starting to see more and more that we're getting higher and higher stakes and lower ability to kind of step up to those stakes. In some areas, some people are rocking it and are just out of the park with it and are thriving in this kind of environment.
And I think if you're in certain industries, it's a great time, right? Tech, medical, retail, food. These are good businesses to be in. And for the rest of us, we're kind of scrambling around a little bit. I feel like we've almost come full circle from the beginning, because we start with observations in lockdown, and then you give us this really lovely kind of philosophical approach to, you know what, maybe we all need to just check ourselves with what we're trying to achieve and who's setting those expectations.
Oh, and who is setting the expectations? Who's doing that? Because if we're doing it for ourselves, then we're in control. And why not choose expectations that serve you?
Well,
and your purpose and your meaning.
Most of the time, it's me who sets those expectations on myself. Right? There are times when clients push them a little bit too far. Brad, can we have that by Friday? Expectation management required. But to your point, if we look to what we can control, uncertain times seem easier. And I think what would be really cool is to come back together again in, say, 2 months' time, when we're coming to the end of the first quarter of year 2021.
Yeah.
And we reconvene from this point of controlling what we can, not being a slave to, traditional ways of doing things. And will you come back and unpack with me what the world looks like 1 quarter in to 2020?
Yes, absolutely. This sort of like, so how'd that work out for you?
Exactly.
So how's that going? Yeah. I'd love to, Brad. I'd love to. I really enjoy our conversations each and every time. So thank you so much. It's been really great.
It's my pleasure to have you. And Aura, thank you for coming on. I know that we'll talk before we come back onto a podcast. But in the meantime, just thank you so much. That was brilliant fun.
Thank you so much as well, Brad. Really appreciate it.